It was a bright Tuesday morning, and the city streets shimmered under the early sunlight. People were rushing to work, taxis honked, and coffee shops were crowded with patrons who were already in a hurry. In the middle of this busy city stood the tall, glass and steel building of Zenith Tech, a company known for its cutting-edge software and high-profile clients. The building was modern and impressive, with reflective windows that made it shine like a diamond in the morning sun. Inside, employees moved quickly, carrying laptops, tablets, and stacks of papers. The office hummed with activity. Phones rang constantly, keyboards clicked rapidly, and conversations flowed across departments. Every employee knew that Zenith Tech was a place of speed, precision, and high expectations. At the top floor of this impressive building sat the CEO, Richard Langley. He was a man in his early 50s, known for his sharp mind, fast decision-making, and demanding personality. His office was spacious, with large windows that provided a panoramic view of the city below. A sleek desk stood in the middle, cluttered with papers, reports, and a steaming cup of coffee. Richard sat in a high-backed chair, his eyes scanning the quarterly reports on his screen. He took a careful sip of his espresso, enjoying the rich aroma and the warmth it provided on a cool morning. Everything looked perfect. Numbers were up, clients were happy, and the company's reputation continued to grow. For Richard, mornings like this were a chance to feel proud of all he had built. Suddenly, the calm was shattered. Red warning lights flashed on screens across the office. The steady hum of computers was replaced by a sharp, piercing alarm. Employees froze, staring at their monitors in disbelief. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Zenith Tech's main system, the heart of all operations, had crashed. Panic spread almost instantly. Phones that had been ringing normally now went unanswered. Emails piled up. The sleek order of the office had turned into chaos in a matter of seconds. Richard's assistant, a young woman named Emily, picked up the phone and dialed IT with trembling hands. "We have a full system crash," she reported urgently. "Servers are down. Clients are calling. Richard, it's a disaster." Her voice trembled as she spoke, reflecting the tension in the office. Richard stood up from his chair, his mind racing. He had trained for emergencies, but nothing prepared him for the reality of seeing his entire company's operations stop at once. His pulse quickened. Every second of downtime could mean lost contracts, angry clients, and a hit to the company's reputation. Across the office, employees whispered anxiously to each other. Some ran to check their own systems, others tried to call clients to explain the situation. The atmosphere was tense, filled with fear, confusion, and urgency. Richard paced across his office, hands in his pockets, thinking about the upcoming board meeting. Investors expected updates, and any delay could mean trouble. His mind worked frantically, weighing options, remembering protocols, trying to find a solution. But for the first time in years, he felt out of control. Meanwhile, unnoticed by most, the cleaning staff continued their work. Janitors and maintenance workers moved quietly through the office, emptying trash bins, polishing floors, and wiping down desks. One janitor, Tom Jenkins, a middle-aged man with a calm demeanor, worked steadily, moving past frantic employees without drawing attention. He had been at Zenith Tech for over a decade, knowing every hallway, every machine, and every routine of the office. He had seen his fair share of small crises, but nothing like this. He glanced at the flashing lights on the screens and shook his head slightly, muttering under his breath. "Another big one," he said quietly, returning to his work. Richard's assistant returned with the IT manager, a man in his 40s named Carl, who walked briskly into the CEO's office. "Richard," Carl said, his voice tight with tension, "the system is down completely. We don't know why yet, but we are running diagnostics. It could take hours to restore everything." Richard's eyes widened. "Hours?" Hours of downtime could cost millions. He felt a cold sweat on his forehead. He was used to being in control, making decisions, and solving problems quickly, but this was different. This was massive, unpredictable, and threatening everything he had worked for. Richard took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He had to remain calm, for the employees, for the clients, and for the investors. But inside, panic churned. His mind replayed every possible scenario: client complaints, contract breaches, investors pulling out, media coverage. He thought of the board meeting scheduled in an hour, the high expectations of stakeholders, and the looming pressure of leadership. This was more than a technical failure, it was a test of his composure and his ability to manage crisis under pressure. Downstairs, employees continued to react to the chaos. Phones rang without answers, and colleagues huddled together, discussing what could have gone wrong. The finance team was especially worried, checking payment systems, pending transactions, and payroll. Customer support struggled to manage calls from frustrated clients who were experiencing problems because the system was down. In each department, the mood was tense and anxious. The calm, professional environment Zenith Tech was known for had transformed into a storm of stress and fear. Amid this tension, a quiet figure appeared. The office doors opened, and a young girl, no older than 16, walked in carrying a small notebook. She moved with confidence, her eyes scanning the room, observing the chaos but not reacting with panic. This was Tom Jenkins' daughter, visiting her father briefly. She had a curiosity about computers and a natural talent that she had been developing quietly for years. Her presence went almost unnoticed at first, as employees were too caught up in their own crises. But there was a calmness in her that contrasted sharply with the frantic atmosphere. Richard noticed her out of the corner of his eye. He frowned. "Who is that?" he asked Emily quietly. Emily glanced up but shrugged. "I think she's the janitor's daughter," she whispered. Richard returned to his pacing, but something made him watch her more closely. She walked past employees, ignored the shouting, and approached one of the main terminals. Her hands moved quickly across the keyboard, her eyes scanning lines of code, error messages, and system logs with ease. There was a quiet focus in her, a precision that was unexpected from someone so young. Employees noticed her, some stopping to watch. The IT team exchanged confused glances. "Who is she?" one whispered. "Does she even know what she's doing?" Carl, the IT manager, walked over to intercept her, unsure if this was some kind of security issue. But as he watched, he realized she wasn't confused or lost. Her fingers danced across the keyboard, opening diagnostic tools, running scripts, and tracing connections. She seemed to understand the system deeply, intuitively knowing where to look, what to check, and what to fix first. Richard froze in his office, staring at her. He had never seen anyone solve problems like this without formal training or experience. The panic that had consumed him just moments ago seemed to pause, replaced by disbelief. The young girl, the janitor's daughter, was moving through the system with skill, her confidence calm, her knowledge precise. Within minutes, the monitors in the office flickered, and red error messages slowly disappeared. Screens that had gone dark began to show normal activity. The office fell into stunned silence. Richard took a step forward. Could this be real? A teenager, someone with no official role in the company, was fixing a system crash that had paralyzed the entire office. He watched in awe and disbelief. The IT manager Carl was speechless. Employees whispered among themselves, unable to comprehend what they had just seen. Tom Jenkins arrived at the scene, slightly embarrassed but clearly proud of his daughter. "She likes computers," he explained quietly to Richard. "She's been learning on her own for years." Richard nodded slowly, still trying to process what was happening. He realized that titles, experience, and hierarchy did not matter when faced with raw talent, intuition, and skill. The system was coming back online, employees were calming down, and the chaos was subsiding, all because of this young girl. It was a reminder that brilliance could appear in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the greatest solutions come from those who are overlooked. As the office slowly returned to its normal rhythm, Richard took a deep breath. His heart rate slowed, and the panic that had gripped him began to fade. But one thought remained clear in his mind: today had been a lesson in humility, talent, and the unpredictable nature of life. The janitor's daughter had arrived unexpectedly and changed the course of Zenith Tech's day and perhaps the company's future. The office was slowly regaining its rhythm, but the tension that had filled Zenith Tech earlier in the morning still lingered like a shadow. Employees whispered in corners, checking their screens cautiously, unsure if the system would hold this time. Phones rang less urgently now, and email notifications began to pop up normally again. Everyone had seen the panic, and everyone had witnessed something extraordinary. Richard Langley, the CEO, remained in his office, leaning against the edge of his desk. His eyes were fixed on the young girl who had just solved the crisis. She was still at the main terminal, working with calm focus, making small adjustments and double-checking the system to ensure it wouldn't crash again. Richard's mind was racing. How had someone so young, someone with no official training, managed to restore an entire company's system when even the most experienced IT professionals had struggled? He felt a mixture of awe, curiosity, and a subtle unease. Emily, his assistant, walked in cautiously. "Richard," she said softly, "maybe we should talk to her. I mean, she saved the company today." Her voice carried excitement and hesitation. She had always admired Richard's ability to make tough decisions, but now he seemed unsure. This situation was different. Titles and roles didn't apply here. This was about talent, skill, and intuition. Richard nodded slowly, his fingers tapping on the polished surface of his desk. "You're right," he said. "But I don't want to frighten her. She's young. She doesn't belong in the corporate world, not yet. But she deserves recognition." He paused, considering his next words carefully. "Let's ask her to come up here. Quietly. I want to understand how she did it." Meanwhile, down in the office, employees were still buzzing about the event. Conversations were hushed but intense. "Did you see that?" one whispered to another. "She just walked in and fixed everything. And she didn't even hesitate." Another employee added, "It's incredible. I've been here for 10 years, and I've never seen anyone move through the system like that." People shook their heads in disbelief. The janitor's daughter had become the hero of the day, someone who had earned the respect of everyone, whether they realized it or not. Tom Jenkins, her father, approached her quietly, a proud smile on his face. "Are you okay?" he asked. Everyone staring. She looked up from the keyboard and smiled back. "I'm fine, Dad. It's just a system. I knew what to check first. The error messages told me everything I needed to know." Her voice was calm, confident, and mature beyond her years. Tom felt a surge of pride. He had always known his daughter was talented, but seeing her handle a full-scale corporate crisis left him speechless. Carl, the IT manager, finally found his voice. He walked over slowly, his eyes still wide with disbelief. "Young lady," he said cautiously, "that was amazing. You really know what you're doing." The girl nodded politely. "Thank you, sir. I've spent a lot of time learning. I like solving problems." Carl looked at Richard, silently asking what he should do next. Richard, still observing from his office, simply nodded. Richard took a deep breath and opened his office door. He walked down the corridor, every step deliberate, feeling a strange mix of curiosity and respect. Employees parted slightly, watching the CEO move toward the young girl. The office seemed to hold its breath. Richard approached her slowly. "Hello," he said, his voice steady but warm. "I'm Richard Langley, CEO of Zenith Tech." The girl looked up at him calmly, her eyes clear and confident. "I'm Sarah," she replied simply. "I'm Tom's daughter." Her voice was steady, but there was a spark of pride in her tone. She didn't seem intimidated by the CEO at all, and that surprised Richard. Most people, even adults, would feel nervous in his presence. But she looked at him as if they were equals, two people facing the same problem together. Richard smiled faintly, trying to mask the awe he felt. "Sarah," he said, "what you just did, it's remarkable. Do you understand what could have happened if the system hadn't come back online? Millions of dollars, client trust, everything could have been lost. And yet you fixed it, calmly, quickly, with no panic at all." Sarah nodded. "I just followed the steps I know. The system shows errors, and the errors tell you what's wrong. It's like reading a story. You just have to pay attention." Richard leaned against the side of a desk, watching her closely. "And you taught yourself all of this?" he asked. "No classes, no official training?" Sarah smiled. "Mostly online tutorials, Dad helping a little, practice at home on old computers. I like figuring things out. It's fun for me." Richard felt a mix of surprise and admiration. This young girl had turned an ordinary moment into something extraordinary, using curiosity, knowledge, and confidence. He realized that talent often comes from passion, not titles or degrees. Tom Jenkins stood nearby, smiling quietly but nervously. He was proud of his daughter, but he also worried. "She's just 16, he said. "I don't know if the corporate world is the right place for her." Richard turned and looked at him, his eyes serious but not harsh. "It's not about the corporate world yet," he said. "It's about recognizing talent and giving her the opportunity to grow. She's shown courage, skill, and calm in a crisis. That's worth more than experience sometimes." Tom nodded slowly, feeling a strange relief. Emily stepped closer, adding, "Richard, maybe we should have her help train the IT team, or even look at projects with us. She could teach them things they haven't learned yet." Richard considered this carefully. The idea of a teenager guiding experienced professionals was unusual, maybe even radical, but the results spoke for themselves. "Yes," he said finally. "Let's see how she can help. But carefully. I don't want to overwhelm her, but I also don't want to waste her talent." Sarah's face lit up slightly, a hint of excitement appearing in her eyes. "I'd like that," she said simply. "I want to learn more and help where I can." Richard nodded, feeling a strange sense of hope. The day had begun with panic, fear, and uncertainty. Now, it was shifting. Zenith Tech had faced a crisis, but it had also discovered something unexpected: raw, unpolished talent in the most unlikely place. He realized that sometimes, the solutions to the biggest problems come from people you least expect. Across the office, employees were slowly returning to their work, though their whispers and glances continued. They had witnessed something unusual, something inspiring. Even the most experienced employees felt a sense of humility, seeing a young girl solve a problem they had spent years learning to manage. It was a reminder that brilliance and courage could appear at any age, in any role, and that sometimes, being open to the unexpected could change everything. Richard walked back to his office, still watching Sarah carefully. He felt a mix of emotions: relief that the system was back online, awe at Sarah's skill, and curiosity about her future. He realized that leadership wasn't just about managing crises, it was about recognizing talent, encouraging growth, and sometimes letting go of expectations to see what could happen. Tom Jenkins stayed close to his daughter, proud but cautious. He had always encouraged her interest in computers, buying her old machines to tinker with and letting her explore online tutorials. But today had been different. Today, she had stepped into a world far beyond her age, a world of pressure, responsibility, and high stakes, and she had not faltered. He felt a surge of pride mixed with a protective instinct, knowing that his daughter had immense potential, but also immense responsibility. Richard sat at his desk, thinking about what had just happened. A morning that began with fear and panic had turned into a moment of revelation. He realized that the strength of a company was not just in its systems, its policies, or its employees. It was in the unexpected moments of courage and talent that revealed themselves when the pressure was highest. Sarah had reminded him of a truth he sometimes forgot: brilliance doesn't follow a schedule, a title, or a rule. Sometimes, it appears quietly, unexpectedly, and changes everything in its path. As the morning continued, Sarah worked alongside the IT team, showing them ways to check for hidden errors, optimize processes, and prevent future crashes. Her approach was simple, intuitive, and effective. Employees who had been skeptical at first began to listen, learn, and even admire her. Richard watched from his office, a mix of admiration and reflection in his gaze. He knew that today would be remembered not for the system crash, but for the courage, skill, and quiet brilliance of the janitor's daughter who had walked in and changed everything. By noon, the office had returned to a sense of normalcy. Clients' calls were managed, emails had been sent, and the system was running smoothly. Employees moved with a renewed sense of energy, sharing stories of Sarah's talent and discussing lessons learned from the unexpected event. Richard called for a short company-wide meeting. Everyone gathered, some with smiles, some still shaken, but all aware that they had witnessed something extraordinary. Richard spoke to the room, his voice calm but firm. Today, we faced the company-wide meeting had a quiet, electric energy. Employees gathered in the large conference room, whispering and exchanging glances, all eyes subtly on Sarah. Even though she was just a teenager, she stood near the front, calm and composed, with her notebook in hand. Richard Langley took the stage, the room slowly settling into an expectant silence. He looked around at his team, seeing both curiosity and admiration in their faces, but also a sense of humility. Today had shown them something they had not expected, that brilliance could appear in the most unlikely forms. Richard began, "This morning, we faced a crisis that could have cost the company dearly. The system crashed, and for a moment, we all felt uncertain. But thanks to someone among us, someone we didn't expect, we were able to recover, smoothly and completely. That person is Sarah Jenkins." A ripple of surprise went through the room. Sarah, standing modestly, felt her cheeks warm, but she maintained her calm composure. She stepped forward slightly, unsure of what to say. The employees watched in silence. Richard gestured for her to speak. I just followed what I knew," she said quietly. "The errors told me what to check first. I didn't do anything special. I just focused on the problem." Her words were humble, but the calm confidence in her voice made a strong impression on everyone. Richard nodded, smiling. "That humility is as impressive as your skill, Sarah. But what you did today is a reminder to all of us. Sometimes, the answers to the biggest problems come from people we least expect. Your courage and focus saved the day, and that is something to celebrate." The employees clapped, and Sarah gave a small nod of thanks. She felt proud, but more than that, she felt inspired by the trust and respect shown by the CEO. Tom Jenkins stood at the back, watching his daughter with a mixture of pride and worry. He had always encouraged her love for computers, giving her old machines to tinker with and letting her explore freely. But seeing her in front of a room full of professionals, respected and admired for what she had done, made him realize just how fast she was growing. He knew this day could change her life, and he wanted to make sure she was ready for what might come next. After the meeting, Richard invited Sarah and Tom to his office. They walked down the hallway, employees quietly parting to let the CEO pass. Once inside, Richard gestured for them to sit. I want to talk about today, and about your future, Sarah, he began. You have an extraordinary talent. Not just skill, but calmness under pressure, and the ability to understand complex systems quickly. Those qualities are rare. I want to make sure you have the opportunity to develop them. Sarah listened carefully, her eyes wide with interest. You mean, work with the company, she asked, almost in disbelief. Richard nodded. Yes, but carefully. I don't want to put too much pressure on you. You're young, and your education is important. But I also don't want your talent to go unnoticed. I'd like you to start learning from our IT team, working on small projects, and gradually taking on more responsibility as you grow. This isn't a full-time role, just mentorship and exposure. Tom Jenkins looked uncertain. I appreciate that, Richard, but she's only 16. I don't want her overwhelmed. Richard smiled reassuringly. I understand completely. That's why we will go slowly. But I also know talent like hers doesn't wait. If we can guide her now, it will benefit both her and the company. She could become something truly remarkable. Sarah's face lit up with a mixture of excitement and determination. I'd like that, she said softly. I want to learn more, and I want to help where I can. I promise I'll be careful and work hard. Richard nodded approvingly. Good. That attitude is exactly why you succeeded today. Focus, patience, and a willingness to learn. Those three things will take you far. Meanwhile, the office had started to settle into a new rhythm. Employees who had witnessed Sarah's unexpected brilliance were quietly talking among themselves, exchanging thoughts about what had happened. The IT team, in particular, was intrigued. Carl, the IT manager, was speaking to his senior staff. I think we need to rethink how we approach problems, he said. This girl has shown us that experience isn't everything. We need to be open to new ideas, even from people outside our department. Some employees were more skeptical. She's just a kid, one said. We've spent years learning these systems. How could she possibly know more than us? But even they couldn't deny the results. The system was fixed, the data was safe, and the company's operations were back to normal, all because of Sarah. Slowly, they began to realize that innovation sometimes comes from the most unexpected sources. As the day went on, Sarah worked quietly with the IT team. She observed their methods, asked questions, and suggested improvements where she felt confident. The professionals were initially surprised to receive advice from someone so young, but they quickly realized her insights were accurate and practical. One by one, they began to respect her knowledge, not as a novelty, but as genuine skill. Tom watched from the doorway, feeling a mixture of pride and caution. He had always known Sarah was talented, but seeing her work alongside professionals, holding her own in discussions, and earning respect from experienced adults, made him realize just how capable she was. At the same time, he knew the world could be harsh, especially for someone so young. He wanted to protect her, but he also wanted to trust her judgment. In the afternoon, Richard called an emergency strategy session. He wanted to ensure that no further system issues could disrupt the company. He invited Sarah to join. At first, some employees protested. She's still a teenager, one said quietly to another. But Richard's presence and his clear trust in Sarah made them hesitate. They realized that today had been a lesson in humility, and perhaps in openness to new ideas. During the session, Sarah quietly analyzed the data, pointing out potential weak points in the system that had previously been overlooked. Her suggestions were clear, practical, and immediately useful. Carl, the IT manager, nodded in approval. This is impressive, he said. I've never seen anyone spot these issues this quickly. Sarah simply smiled. I just try to notice patterns. It helps me understand where the problems might be. Richard watched her carefully, feeling a sense of admiration. He had spent decades leading teams, managing crises, and making high-stakes decisions. Yet today, a 16-year-old girl had reminded him that leadership and problem-solving weren't just about experience, they were also about insight, focus, and courage. He realized that sometimes, the best lessons come from unexpected teachers. As the afternoon drew to a close, Sarah's presence had changed the atmosphere of the company. Employees were no longer just working, they were inspired. The IT team had new ideas, the management was thinking differently about talent, and even the janitorial staff were talking about the remarkable courage of one of their own children. It was a reminder that heroes could appear anywhere, and that brilliance didn't always come with a title or an office. Richard returned to his office, reflecting on the day. He realized that while the system crash had been a crisis, it had also been an opportunity. An opportunity to recognize talent, to challenge assumptions, and to see the world differently. He knew that Sarah's involvement with Zenith Tech would be carefully guided, but he also knew that she had the potential to change the company in ways he had never imagined. Tom joined him briefly, sharing a quiet moment of pride and concern. "She did more than I ever imagined today," Tom said. "I just hope she's ready for what comes next." Richard nodded. "She's ready. And if she isn't, we will help her grow. The most important thing is to nurture her talent, carefully and wisely. She's shown courage, skill, and humility today, qualities that will serve her well." That evening, as the office emptied and the last lights were turned off, Sarah packed her bag and walked with her father toward the exit. Employees who had seen her work earlier smiled and waved, some even clapping softly in admiration. Sarah felt a sense of calm pride. She hadn't expected this attention, nor did she fully understand what her actions had started, but she knew she had done something meaningful. She had helped people, solved a problem, and proven her ability to stay calm under pressure. Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the building. Tom looked down at his daughter and smiled. "You were amazing today, Sarah," he said. "Really amazing." Sarah looked up at him and nodded, a small, confident smile on her face. "I just did what I knew," she said softly. "I want to keep learning. There's so much more I can do." Tom felt a mixture of pride and awe. His daughter was no longer just a child in his care, she was a young person with real talent, capable of achieving extraordinary things. As they walked to the car, Richard watched from his office window. He felt a strange mix of relief, admiration, and curiosity. Today had started with chaos and panic, but it had ended with inspiration and new possibilities. He knew that the janitor's daughter had changed the company forever, and perhaps even changed him in the process. Sometimes, the smallest actions by the least expected people could have the greatest impact. The city lights began to twinkle as evening settled in, and for Zenith Tech, this day would be remembered as more than a crisis averted. It was a turning point. A reminder that talent could come from anywhere, courage could come in small packages, and inspiration often arrived quietly, without warning, ready to change everything. The next morning, Zenith Tech's office was alive with a different energy. The usual hum of computers and chatter of employees seemed lighter, more focused, as if the whole company had taken a deep breath after yesterday's chaos. Word had spread quickly about Sarah Jenkins' role in saving the system. Even people who had never met her were talking about the young girl who had stepped in and solved a problem that even senior staff had struggled with. Sarah arrived early, walking through the glass doors with her father by her side. Tom had insisted on accompanying her that morning, wanting to make sure she wasn't overwhelmed by the sudden attention. The receptionist greeted them warmly, her eyes lighting up. "Good morning, Sarah. Everyone is still talking about yesterday. You were amazing." Sarah smiled softly, feeling a mix of pride and nervousness. She hadn't expected this level of attention, but she knew she had to stay focused. Richard Langley was already in his office, reviewing reports. When he saw Sarah and her father enter, he motioned for them to come in. "Morning, Sarah," he said, his tone warm. "I hope you slept well." Sarah nodded. "Yes, sir. Thank you." Tom watched quietly, noticing how calm Sarah seemed, despite everything that had happened. Richard gestured for them to sit. "I've been thinking about yesterday," Richard began, leaning back in his chair. "Your approach to the system crash showed me something important, not just about technical skill, but about problem solving under pressure. You didn't panic. You analyzed, you planned, and you acted. That's rare, even in experienced professionals." Sarah felt a little shy but nodded. "I just try to stay calm. I like to understand the problem before trying to fix it." Richard smiled. "Exactly. That mindset is what makes someone truly exceptional. And that's why I want to give you a chance to learn more. Starting today, you'll begin working with our IT mentorship program. It will be part-time, so it won't interfere with your schoolwork. You'll shadow our team, take on small projects, and gradually take more responsibility. Do you think you're ready for that?" Sarah's eyes widened slightly. She had expected guidance, maybe some small assignments, but this felt like a real opportunity. "Yes, sir," she said, her voice steady but full of quiet excitement. "I'm ready." Tom exchanged a glance with Richard, silently asking if this was the right step. Richard reassured him with a nod. "We'll move carefully. I don't want her overwhelmed, but I also don't want her talent to go unnoticed." After the meeting, Sarah walked to the IT department with Carl, the team manager who had been stunned by her insight the previous day. Carl smiled as she approached. "I hope you're ready to get your hands dirty," he said, opening a workstation for her. Sarah laughed softly. "I'm ready," she replied. She settled in at a desk and began observing, asking questions, and learning the workflow. The team was impressed by her attention to detail and her willingness to listen. As the morning went on, Sarah's understanding of the system deepened. She began noticing small patterns and potential weaknesses that even Carl hadn't realized before. The team started to see her not as a child, but as a valuable contributor. One by one, they began testing her ideas. When they worked, the room filled with quiet nods of approval. Meanwhile, in the executive offices, Richard was receiving messages and calls from board members. They had heard about the crisis and Sarah's role, and their curiosity was piqued. Some wanted to know how a teenager had been able to solve such a complex problem. Richard simply explained, "Sometimes talent doesn't come in the packages we expect. She has a natural ability and the right mindset. We're guiding her carefully, and it's already proving valuable." The day moved quickly. Sarah balanced her school assignments with her mentorship activities, showing a level of discipline that surprised even her father. She wasn't just learning technical skills, she was learning to communicate with adults, to explain her ideas clearly, and to take responsibility for her contributions. By lunchtime, she had gained the respect of the entire IT team. During lunch, Sarah and Tom sat in the small cafeteria. Tom looked at his daughter with a mixture of pride and concern. "Sarah, I can see how much you're learning, but I want you to remember to take care of yourself. Don't push too hard." Sarah smiled reassuringly. "I know, Dad. I'll be careful. But I also want to do my best. I want to learn as much as I can." Tom nodded. "I understand. Just promise me you'll ask for help if it gets too much." "I promise," Sarah said. In the afternoon, Richard called another meeting. This time, it was to discuss a new project that had been delayed due to the system crash. He invited Sarah to sit with the senior team, a move that surprised many. As she entered the room, whispers spread. People were curious about the teenager who had captured the CEO's attention. Richard began the meeting. We've learned a lot from yesterday's events. Today, we need to plan for the future. I want everyone to be open to new ideas, regardless of where they come from. That includes you, Sarah. Sarah felt her heart beat faster but stayed calm. She listened carefully as the team discussed strategies and potential improvements. When she had an idea, she spoke up clearly and confidently. If we restructure this part of the system, it could prevent similar crashes in the future, she suggested. The room fell silent for a moment. Then Carl nodded. That's a good point. We can test that approach. Others began to consider her suggestions seriously. For the first time, Sarah realized that her contributions mattered not because of her age, but because of their value. As the day ended, Sarah walked with her father toward the exit again. Employees waved and smiled, some even stopping to ask questions about her ideas and insights. She felt a mix of pride, excitement, and responsibility. She was learning not only about technology but also about trust, respect, and leadership. That evening, Richard reflected on the past few days. The crisis had been challenging, but it had also been enlightening. He realized that his assumptions about experience and expertise had been challenged in a profound way. A 16-year-old had reminded him that talent and courage often appeared where least expected, and that being open to new perspectives was crucial for growth. Tom and Sarah arrived home, tired but satisfied. Sarah unpacked her school bag and sat at her desk to finish her homework. She thought about the day's lessons, the new skills she had learned, and the respect she had earned. She also thought about the challenges ahead, knowing that her journey with Zenith Tech had only just begun. Tom watched his daughter for a moment, feeling a mixture of awe and concern. She was growing up so fast, and the world around her was noticing her talent. He knew she would face challenges, skepticism, and pressure, but he also knew she had the strength, focus, and humility to handle it. He silently promised himself that he would support her, protect her when necessary, and encourage her to reach her full potential. The next morning, Sarah returned to Zenith Tech with a renewed sense of purpose. She was no longer just the janitor's daughter, she was a young professional in training, someone whose ideas and insights mattered. Employees smiled and greeted her warmly, and she felt a sense of belonging she had never experienced before. Throughout the day, Sarah continued to learn, contribute, and inspire. She worked on small projects, tested system improvements, and offered suggestions that were implemented by the IT team. Each success built her confidence, and each challenge taught her patience and resilience. Richard observed quietly from his office, pleased with the progress. He knew that guiding a young talent required careful balance, encouragement without pressure, mentorship without control. But he also knew that Sarah had the potential to change the company's culture, to remind everyone that brilliance could come from unexpected places, and to inspire a new way of thinking about talent and opportunity. By the end of the week, Sarah had become a quiet symbol of hope and inspiration at Zenith Tech. Employees no longer saw her simply as a teenager, they saw her as someone with vision, skill, and courage. The company itself had begun to embrace a more open-minded approach, encouraging ideas from all levels, listening more carefully, and respecting the contributions of every individual. As Sarah left the office that Friday evening, she felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. She knew there was still much to learn, many challenges ahead, but she also knew she had taken her first real steps into a world of opportunity. The system crash, the panic, and the unexpected crisis had turned into a life-changing experience not just for the company, but for her. Tom walked beside her, his hand on her shoulder. "I'm proud of you, Sarah." "More than I can say," he said. Sarah smiled softly. "Thank you, Dad. I couldn't have done it without your support." He nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility and pride. His daughter was no longer just a child, she was someone who could face challenges, make a difference, and inspire others. Richard stayed in his office, looking out at the city skyline as the sun set. He thought about the journey ahead for Sarah, for the company, and for everyone who had witnessed her brilliance. He realized that sometimes, the greatest lessons came from the most unexpected people, and that the following week at Zenith Tech felt different. The office was quieter in some ways but filled with a renewed energy. Employees had started to see the company not just as a workplace but as a place where anyone's ideas could matter, no matter their age or position. Sarah's contributions had sparked a subtle but powerful change. People were now more willing to speak up, to share their thoughts, and to trust that even the smallest suggestions could be important. Sarah arrived early, her backpack slung over one shoulder, her expression calm but determined. She had grown more confident in the past days, understanding the flow of the company and the structure of the IT systems. Carl, her mentor in the IT department, was already waiting for her. "Morning, Sarah. Ready to test some new ideas today?" he asked. Sarah nodded. "Yes, sir. I've been thinking about yesterday's issues, and I have some suggestions that might prevent future crashes." The team gathered around, listening carefully as she explained her ideas in simple, clear terms. Her approach was methodical. She outlined potential problems, proposed solutions, and described how these changes could improve the system's reliability. Everyone was impressed, and Carl looked at Richard, who had been observing quietly from the doorway. The CEO's face held a mix of admiration and surprise. He realized that Sarah's influence was becoming more than just a temporary fix, it was shaping the future of the company. As the day moved on, Sarah was invited into more meetings with senior staff. She listened attentively, asking questions and providing insights when appropriate. Some executives were hesitant at first, unsure about taking advice from someone so young. But Sarah's calm demeanor and well-thought-out suggestions gradually earned their respect. She didn't demand attention, she earned it with her ideas and her quiet confidence. Meanwhile, Richard called a company-wide meeting to formally recognize Sarah's contributions. The employees gathered in the main conference room, curious about the announcement. Richard stood at the front, his presence commanding attention, yet his tone warm. "Yesterday, our company faced a serious challenge. A system crash that could have caused significant problems. But thanks to one of our youngest visitors, we were able to recover quickly and efficiently. Sarah Jenkins, the janitor's daughter, stepped in and solved a problem that many of our experienced staff could not. Her courage, intelligence, and clarity of thought saved the day. Today, we recognize her efforts and formally welcome her as part of our mentorship program." The room erupted in applause. Sarah's cheeks turned pink, and she looked down, embarrassed by the attention. Tom, standing behind her, felt a swell of pride that he could barely contain. He had always known Sarah was talented, but seeing her recognized in front of the entire company made it real. Richard continued, "Let this be a reminder to all of us, talent and insight can come from the most unexpected places. We must always be ready to listen, to learn, and to encourage. Sarah, welcome to Zenith Tech. We look forward to seeing all that you will accomplish." The applause continued as Sarah walked to the front to accept a small plaque and a certificate. She smiled shyly, shaking hands with Richard and some of the senior staff. For a moment, it felt surreal, but deep down she knew she had earned this recognition through her own hard work and problem solving. After the ceremony, Sarah returned to the IT department where Carl and the team were waiting. "Well done," Carl said. "You've inspired everyone today. Not just the executives, but all of us." Sarah smiled. "I'm just glad I could help. And I've learned so much from all of you too." The team nodded, feeling that this experience had strengthened their bond. They were no longer just co-workers, they were collaborators, united by a shared respect for skill and dedication, regardless of age. As the week continued, Sarah took on new challenges. She worked on smaller projects independently, testing her solutions and learning from mistakes. She learned to communicate with different departments, understanding their needs and translating technical problems into clear explanations. Her father, Tom, often watched her from the sidelines, amazed at how composed and capable she had become. He knew this experience was shaping her future, teaching her lessons that went far beyond technology. Richard observed all of this with growing admiration. He began to realize that Sarah's influence was transforming the company culture. Employees were more open, collaborative, and willing to try new ideas. He saw firsthand that a single act of courage and intelligence could ripple through an entire organization, changing the way people thought about leadership, teamwork, and opportunity. By Friday, Zenith Tech had fully adjusted to the new normal. Sarah had developed a schedule that allowed her to balance schoolwork with her mentorship, and she had already begun contributing to larger projects. She had earned the respect of the IT team and senior staff alike, and her influence was quietly spreading to other departments. Her name became associated with problem-solving, innovation, and courage. One afternoon, as Sarah worked on a system upgrade, Richard walked into the IT department. He watched her for a moment, noting how focused she was, how carefully she analyzed each step, and how calmly she explained her reasoning to Carl and the team. He felt a sense of satisfaction that was rare in his role as CEO. "Sarah," he said, approaching her desk, "I want you to know that what you're doing here is remarkable. You're not just fixing problems, you're teaching all of us a lesson about courage, intelligence, and perspective. Never forget that your contributions matter." Sarah looked up, her eyes bright. "Thank you, sir. I just want to keep learning and helping wherever I can." Richard nodded. "That's the right attitude. Keep it, and you'll go far." Word of Sarah's accomplishments began to spread outside Zenith Tech as well. Local newspapers and online blogs featured stories about the young girl who had saved a major company's system from disaster. Interviews highlighted her intelligence, humility, and determination. Parents and students everywhere were inspired by her story, seeing proof that age was not a barrier to achievement. Despite the growing attention, Sarah remained humble. She focused on her work, her learning, and her family. She knew that recognition was fleeting, but skill, knowledge, and character were lasting. She wanted to continue improving herself and helping the company, not for fame, but because it was the right thing to do. Tom noticed the change in her confidence and maturity. She was still his daughter, but now he saw a new level of independence, responsibility, and awareness. He quietly supported her, giving advice when needed, but allowing her to navigate her own path. He knew that she had discovered a part of herself that was capable of handling challenges far beyond her years. By the end of the month, Zenith Tech had fully integrated Sarah into their mentorship program. She was no longer just the janitor's daughter or the girl who had fixed the system. She was a recognized member of the team, someone whose opinions were valued, whose ideas were considered, and whose courage had reshaped the company culture. Richard reflected on the journey. The system crash had been terrifying, but it had also been a catalyst for change. It had revealed hidden talent, strengthened the company, and reminded everyone that brilliance could appear in unexpected places. He realized that leaders must always be open to learning, listening, and recognizing contributions regardless of source. On her last day of the month in the mentorship program, Sarah sat with her father after work. They walked through the quiet streets, reflecting on the journey. "Dad," Sarah said, "I never imagined something like this could happen. It's been amazing, but also a little scary sometimes." Tom smiled. "I know, sweetheart. But look at what you've accomplished. You stayed calm, you used your mind, and you earned everyone's respect. I'm proud of you." Sarah smiled softly. "I couldn't have done it without your support, Dad. And I want to keep learning, keep helping, and keep doing my best." Tom nodded, feeling a deep sense of pride and hope. He knew that this experience had changed her life, and that she was ready for whatever challenges the future might hold. At Zenith Tech, the atmosphere had shifted permanently. The company had learned that talent was not defined by age or position, but by courage, intelligence, and the willingness to act. Sarah's influence continued to inspire employees to contribute, to innovate, and to support each other. The system crash that had once caused panic now seemed like a distant memory, a lesson in resilience, opportunity, and unexpected brilliance. As the sun set over the city, Richard looked out from his office window, thinking about the journey. He smiled, knowing that the company was stronger, more open-minded, and more inspired than ever. And he knew that Sarah Jenkins, the janitor's daughter who had shocked everyone, had not only saved the system but had also changed the heart of Zenith Tech. In the months that followed, Sarah continued to grow, learn, and inspire. She became a quiet leader in her own right, someone who reminded everyone that courage, skill, and determination could appear in the most unexpected places. Her story became a testament to the power of opportunity, mentorship, and belief in potential, a reminder that sometimes, the smallest voice could make the biggest difference. Sarah's journey had begun with a single moment, a system crash, a crisis, and a choice to act. That moment had led to recognition, growth, and transformation, not just for her, but for everyone around her. And as she looked toward the future, she knew that she would continue to rise, to contribute, and to